Alrighty. So, in continuing this series, I was moving the computer around to forget sometimes that this is all on the arm now. It's nothing to do with the computer. It's a long week, alright? So, in continuing this series, we're getting into the 1989 Calgary Flames. I want to bring up one point before I go into this. These videos, this kind of series, I do this because a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, you can look back on these videos. A lot of the videos that I do that are modern, so contract signings, maybe a big hit, or a dirty hit like Eakin on Lundqvist, those get me a lot of hits quickly. Videos on teams like this, I envision will be the ones that have the longevity. Thus, I am aware when I start a series like this, the view count won't be great. The view count will get better later. That being said, let's dive on into the cheating Calgary Flames of 1989, who kicked the puck in. Stop. Okay. Round 1, Vancouver. Game 7, overtime. Mike Vernon makes a good save on Stan Smeel in the clear. I remember thinking at the time, why did that have to be Stan Smeel? I loved Stan Smeel. But at that point in his career, he had slowed down. His hands weren't what they were when he was younger. And I really felt like if that had been a Linden kid, maybe Vancouver wins that game. Maybe. But Trevor Linden didn't have that breakaway. Smeel did. Vernon makes the save. Joel Otto kicks, scores the goal in overtime to win Game 7. Calgary deserved to win that series. Calgary finished, I think it was 44 points ahead of Vancouver. 40 points ahead. I think it was 117-77 where the point spread. It was crazy. But in that series, there was very little to pick. And then after Calgary sweeps LA, who had just upset the Edmonton Oilers in the first round, Chicago, in the third round, they beat them in 5, and then they beat Montreal in 6. And they won the Stanley Cup in Montreal in Game 6. So, it was quite the season for Calgary. Now, this was their only Stanley Cup. But to give an impression of how good this team was, you have 1 Hall of Famer, 2 Hall of Famers, 3 Hall of Famers, 5 Hall of Famers. But I'm not done. So you got Lanny McDonald, who retired after they won. Hawken Lube, who retired after they won. Hawken Lube's not a Hall of Famer. Al MacInnis is a Hall of Famer. Look at that. Somebody out there's going, he's got Hawken Lube as a Hall of Famer? He's not a Hall of Famer, and you're right. Al MacInnis. It was a long week. It's Friday. My brain's already shut down. My brain's like, cool, it's Friday night. I'm done. I'm out of here. If you need me for anything, I don't care. So Joe Nieuwendyk, Joey Mullen, and Doug Gilmour are all in the Hall of Fame. But I would argue Theoren Fleury absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame. Gary Suter could be argued as Hall of Fame worthy. I can't argue Joel Otto, but I can argue Mike Vernon. So I would not be surprised if 10 years from now we're looking at a team with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Hall of Famers on that roster. And I say that as somebody who did not like the Flames very much at the time. There were players I liked, though. I like Jim Poplinski. And I still like him as an announcer. I love Tim Hunter, which is strange because I'm not, usually a guy who props up enforcers. But there was something about Tim Hunter. And Mark Hunter being on this team was big, too. It's like, oh, good, now they got 2 guys that can fight named Hunter. Tim was a fighter. Mark had 22 goals that year to go along with, if you look at the penalty minutes on this side, 194 penalty minutes for Mark Hunter. Al MacInnis, 136 penalty minutes. Joel Otto, 213. Gary Roberts, 250. Jim Poplinski, 241. Mark Hunter, as I said, 194. Merzen with 142. Rob Ramage with 156. And Tim Hunter with 375. Because every time he got on the ice, he fought. It seemed. seemed to be the case. This was a tough team. It was a talented team. When you look, they played 22 games in the playoffs. Al MacInnis led the way with 31 points and won the Conn Smythe. Let me go ahead and turn around here. Conn Smythe was Al MacInnis. MacInnis led the scoring. Mullen second with 24. Mullen had a career year that year. 110 points and 51 goals. That was Joey Mullen's best year by far. And I like Joey Mullen a lot. Doug Gilmore with 22 points. Joel Otto with 19. Hockenlube with 17. And Nieuwendyk with 14, but 10 of those are goals. So, honestly, this was a very, very good team. And within a couple of years, it had started to fall apart. And within 4 years, it had completely fallen apart. But for right now, this was the team. You have Mike Vernon winning all 16 games. He runs the table. And, of course, famously, this was a year after... Yeah, I think this was a year after the Brett Hull trade. So Brett Hull gets traded out. And Flames fans at the time said it was worth it because they won the Stanley Cup after they traded him. But Walmsley didn't play in the playoffs. And it's arguable that without the addition from the Blues, they still win the Stanley Cup. So Ramage played a small part. That being said, it was a good team. I couldn't stand Joel Otto. Famously, and since this may be for casual people just on their way through going, hey, look, a Calgary Flames video. My friend who lived in Edmonton, after Calgary scored and Joel Otto, with his controversial goal, eliminated the Canucks, my friend Dave in Edmonton sent me a lot of hockey cards of Joel Otto. All Upper Deck, all Joel Otto. There was no letter attached saying why. There was no ha-ha-ha note anywhere to be found. It was just a bunch of Joel Otto cards sent to me. And that was my friend. But, he... And I didn't have to tell him. It's not like we talked on the phone or anything. It's not like this was the days before internet, so we actually had to write letters back and forth. Snail mail, as you call it now. And so he didn't know how I felt. But watching that, he had to know how I felt. Like, he had to have an idea. But the respect that I give to Al MacInnis, we're almost to the end of the dead puck, or the live puck era, and almost ready to start dead puck era. The live puck era went until 93, and then 94 we had a very exciting Stanley Cup final, but the low scoring games had started to creep in. MacInnis was a player who had a feared shot, and that's kind of what he's remembered for, but he was a leader. He was one of the best all-around defensemen I ever saw, and I say this with other videos. Always seemed like a nice guy. Always seemed like I never heard a bad word about him. And if a guy of Al MacInnis' stature was a jerk or treated people badly, you'd hear about it. You hear about it more with hockey players because hockey players are generally considered to be the most easygoing nature of any of the professional sports athletes. So if one of them's a jerk, you'll hear about it a lot quicker, and for a lot less reason. Like, it could just be, oh, you wouldn't sign my autograph. Well, where was he? Urinal? Just, yeah, okay, free hand. Like, sometimes fans can expect a little much, but I never heard a bad word about MacInnis. So anyways, I would put Theoren Fleury in the Hall of Fame. I would put Mike Vernon in the Hall of Fame, and I would argue that Gary Suter at least get considered. And Gary Suter right here is the reason why when I talk about Ryan Suter, half the time I slip and it's Gary Suter. Because in terms of statistics and in terms of playing style and in terms of everything, Ryan Suter and Gary Suter extremely similar. The difference being Gary's got that cup ring, Ryan doesn't. But this is the part where I look at all these stats and I tell you people, this was a team that was tough primarily. It was talented secondarily and feared. But in 1990, North Alberta decided to take the cup back again. So This was Calgary's moment in the sun, and we will talk about Edmonton's tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and I'll talk to you again soon.